When did your something is very wrong here feeling turned out to be true? We had a neighbor who made me feel very uncomfortable. One day, he leaned in the doorway of my bedroom, and I got an immediate get the F out of here vibe. I turned, walked under the weird loop bridge he was making with his arm, all without responding to him. He asked, "Where are you going?" My family was with his. These families had been friends for about 35 years at this point, and he knew I was alone. I was a 9-year-old boy, he was a 30-year-old man. The second I rounded the corner, I ran out of the house and rejoined the cookout. He was later convicted of molesting his son, who was about my age, and I'd already been molested once in my life by someone else, so my mind was like, dude, I can only suppress so much, get the F out of here now. Next story. Mom sat me down when I was 18, already in tears proclaiming she had something serious to tell me. Being the sarcastic and nervous F I am, I turned and joked, "What? Is dad not my real dad anymore?" Velp, folks. Next story. Have a friend that would essentially answer a text message during sex. He was that attached to his phone. He didn't get back to me one day and I noticed his FB hadn't been updated yet. I tried hitting him up a few more times, something didn't feel right. Told a few friends, most wrote it off as nothing, because this guy always seems happy. He lives like an hour away, finally I get someone to go with me to hang out with him. Worst case, we'd say we were gonna be in the neighborhood, that's why we were hitting him up. Had we not done that, he was going to kill himself that night. We showed up and he just started crying immediately and saying that he needed help. We outright intervened in a friend's suicide. He was always so active on social media as a way to hide his depression. It chills me to this day that if maybe I don't write him and get a strange odd feeling, that a friend might not be here today. Edit, a quick follow-up. He's actually quite good now. He struggles still but we'll talk about it and allows us a bit more into his life so that we can help. He's got issues that I myself have, but would never mention it before, so now we can talk about a lot more things. But overall, he got the help he needed and lives pretty well these days. Next story. My mom and dad had this friend that I hated. I thought he was just creepy and weird, and when I'd tell them I hated him they were like, "Be nice." Blah blah blah. Turns out he molested his stepchildren, now he's in jail. Next story. There is such a thing as a feeling of impending doom when your body is like, yo, you are about to die. It is a real thing. I had not been feeling well, and all of a sudden I sat up and had a distinct feeling of you are going to die soon if you don't do something. I drove myself to the ER and on the way was getting chest pains. I went in, told them and they took me to the back. After some tests there were a lot of people around me injecting me with a lot of different stuff. Turns out I had a pulmonary embolism, blood clot in my lung, which at any second could have gone to my brain and killed me then and there. The doctors said if I had left it any longer I would have been dead. Thanks brain. Edit, I am getting a few messages about a clot going from your lung to your brain, and I guess that can't happen. I think they probably told me the clot could have either gone to my lung or brain. I was on a lot of morphine. Smile. Next story. The end of April, my friend and I were to meet up for drinks. He didn't show, didn't answer his phone, didn't respond to my texts. I knew he was dead. I got the call the next day, he died in a car crash on his way to meet me. Edit, for those who are asking why I'd immediately jumped to that conclusion. He was always consistent, always return a text quickly, wouldn't have missed the call otherwise. It was the first nice day, he had his sporty car out, driving too fast. Next story. 4 students of mine won the first prize for a project they did and we all got a free trip to London. We had spent the day sightseeing and were exhausted, so we got an ice cream and sat on a bench in a park to relax. A couple of minutes later I noticed this couple walk by slowly, staring at us. My spidey senses go mental. I do not like these people for some reason. She walks by and sits on the bench next to ours and he sits on the bench across from hers. They aren't talking, just looking at each other. And that is when I notice her reaching into her pockets. I jump up, grab my students and run out of the park. My poor students are confused AF and wondering what the F is wrong with me, when all of a sudden we hear screaming. Turns out she stabbed a couple walking through the park, trying to rob the M. It scares the ever-loving F out of me, knowing had I not gotten my students out of there, we would have been stabbed and robbed. Edit, after reading all the comments, I would like to say that even though that did happen to us, London is a frit destination of mine. I've been back twice since then, I just avoid parks lol. Also, thank you for the gold smile. Next story. TLDR, my dad was really sick and needed a lot of hospital care. When he needed his finger amputated was when I felt in my gut that it wasn't going to be okay. My dad has had health issues since 2008 when the first stroke hit. Since then he was always in and out of hospitals and it became just another thing. It happened so much that he would dismiss symptoms just so he wouldn't have to go to the hospital again. It became even worse when he was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney failure and had to do dialysis 3 times a week. Anyway, I went to visit him about a month ago and out of the blue he kinda looks at his hand and says, "You know, my finger has been smelling funny lately." I'm all incredulous and I tell him funny smells usually means infections. I joke around and tell him he needs to get it looked at before they have to amputate it. Spoiler alert, by the time he had it looked at the blood flow to the finger was compromised due to a fistula in his arm. He needed to get it amputated. This is where the funny feeling kicked in. My grandmother, his mom, passed away in '98 after her leg was amputated. The fact that he had to have anything amputated started making me anxious, and I dismissed it as being overdramatic. His surgery was the Friday before Mother's Day and I went to visit him after work to see how he was feeling. He was so groggy and kept falling asleep at the table, so my mom and I basically carry him to his bed. He's a proud man, super old school in I'm a man, I don't need my wife and daughter helping me kind of way, but he clung to us because he just couldn't do it on his own. We got him to the bed and he couldn't even lift his legs up. I had to do it for him and stick some pillows under his head. I looked over at my mom and the look on her face made my stomach drop, and I asked her if she wanted me to stay with her tonight. You know, just in case. She said yes. 2 a.m. I go downstairs to check on them because I can't sleep. He starts moving around and trying to take his sweater vest off because he's hot. He was still wearing the clothes from earlier. So I help him unzip it and he wakes up briefly, sees that it's me and smiles. He puts his good hand on my arm and just smiles. 4 a.m. Saturday morning, mom wakes me up and real calmly says she doesn't think daddy is breathing. I knew it before I entered the room because in addition to the kidney issues, he had some breathing problems too and always took laborious breaths when he slept. It was quiet. I hesitate to use the term dead quiet because that's exactly what it was. We called 911 and the ambulance came. They got him back, lost him, got him back again, but said he was clinically brain dead and we should probably call the family. So we do. 1 a.m. Mother's Day, my sister and I are standing watch in the room. We agreed to sleep in shifts and it was her turn. My anxiety is skyrocketing and my fight or flight is kicking in and I just want to leave and go for a walk around the halls to calm my mind. So I get up and as I'm passing his bed my anxiety becomes more direct, if that makes sense. I suddenly felt that I needed to be there. So I stood by his bed and held his hand. I told him that we were there with him, and just spoke about anything that came to my head because honestly I'm just flying on autopilot when it came to cognitive function. I do remember saying, right before I sat down, that I know he's tired and that we don't want him to hurt anymore and we'll always love him. I went to go sit back down because I was crying and a few minutes later the machine started going haywire. He passed at 1:30 a.m. Next story. I worked at a fast food restaurant and I got an antsy phone call from my dad telling me to come home ASAP. There were storms on the way and he was nervous about the timing. I thought he was being paranoid until I got this really uneasy feeling as well. Every nerve in my body was telling me to get home right now. I pissed off the manager when I left without mopping the floors. I rushed home and I had barely gotten into the door for 2 minutes before a tornado hit our house. Looking back on it, if I didn't leave when I did, I would have been driving along the road the tornado followed and I probably wouldn't be here. I got written up at work for leaving without completing my tasks, but a write-up is better than being dead.